We will now look at the planner groups method of configuration. Remember that this differs from the call presentation groups method because we need to use it when the telephone number requires modification, so that the call will route successfully by the next service provider or proxy. When the first call fails, the Vega will receive a Q850 calls code, and if it recognizes this in its list, it will present the call to the next dial plan in the group. Let's see how to configure the Vega for this. This time we are going to create dial plans for Profile 3, outgoing calls made by the PBX users. Remember, these should be firstly presented to the ITSP, but if that route fails, then to the PSTN. But in our customer example case, we know that the telephone number must be presented differently to each of the service providers, so we must use the planner groups method. The first thing to do then is to select that option. And now we will set up the plan and call it RePresentation. Now we insert the calls codes for which we want this plan to be used. I'll put 3, 17, 38 and 41, but please refer to the Q850 guide mentioned previously in this tutorial for a full listing of these. We'll submit this and now configure the plans in Profile 3, calls from the PBX. Here we can see some plans which have already been created, which send calls only to the PSTN, including emergency numbers. So now we need to create a plan for the majority of the calls, which should be routed to the ITSP. For calls to succeed to this carrier, the telephone number must be presented without the leading 0, and so we create a dial plan which strips this in the destination field. Next we create a plan for the PSTN, which will be used when the route to the ITSP is unavailable. This time we must present the full telephone number to the service provider in order for the call to be successful. Now we'll put each of the two plans into the RePresentation group which we set up previously. You'll note that this appears in the drop-down box. But there's one more thing to consider here. When you learned about dial plans, you will recall that the Vega selects the appropriate plan using a best match principle based on the telephone number in the source. But you'll notice that the two plans which we have just constructed are in fact the same. Therefore, in order for the Vega to use the one to the ITSP in preference to the one to the PSTN, we need to put these into an order of selection by using the cost feature. Note that 1 is low and 0 is high. Now submit and apply these settings. That completes this session, but don't forget that the call representation feature may also be used to provide call hunting and call distribution features for analog phones connected to VegaStream FXS gateways. Please follow the link for this and other tutorials in this series.